Everyone check your pulse. Yeah. That's me.
Danger.
Welcome back, everyone, to Tefillah Midrash. Who has Deuteronomy 8:10 memorized? Any of us have Deuteronomy 8:10 memorized? You do. Let's hear it, please.
Well, is it when you have eaten and are filled, then you shall bless the Lord? That's something.
It's something just like that. So let's do that. Very good. Our Father, we have eaten and we are satisfied, and we thank you for the land. In Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
So,
What?
You want a chocolate candy bar?
yeah, cacao from Israel.
45%.
45% cacao. I know how much you guys love my studies on mitzvot, but we're not gonna go through all the mitzvot, but we are gonna talk about mitzvot. So let's just do a recap real quick. What is the difference between a positive mitzvah and a negative mitzvah?
Positive is you shall, negative is you shall not.
Awesome. Perfectly stated. What are the three types of mitzvot?
I don't know.
Okay, and dote.
The dot is one.
Boat.
Luchot, well, chim, or luchot, yep.
And nish.
Yep, Mishpatim, very good. All right. We're not going to go that in depth of it.
Time.
So let's take a look at this. How many mitzvot are in this Torah portion? 7 positive and 11 negative for a total of 18. 5 positive and 2 negative for a total of 7. 6 positive and 0 negative for a total of 6. Or 12 positive and 6 negative for a total of 18. How many mitzvot in this Torah portion? Fortunately for you, we're not going to go through them like we normally do. I just wanted to still do the game, though. All right, who guesses A? 7 positive. I got 1 to luck. Take her. What about 6 positive and 0? Anybody for C?
I'll do a C.
Jim will go C.
Oh, no, no, C.
Anybody say 12 positive and 6 negative? Mrs. Soborowski says D. And here we go.
Who's afraid to vote?
Sorry, Mrs. Soborowski.
You're out. See you.
Come back tomorrow. A, out. And 6. Show me the number. Okay.
No, any negative. I know, I was like, hardly any negatives. There's no negative.
All right, so we're not going to, but let's talk about Pinchas. Pinchas' name, Nechoset, his name means dark skin, but Pinchas is the mouth of brass, right? According to tradition, Pinchas, Moshe, like Pinchas' Moshe, his own father, was married to a Midianite. And it is said that his mother was the daughter of Putiel. Who was Putiel? Anybody? Remember? Another name for just
him as the war priest.
Well, I think that he became the high priest, and possibly that when you look at the eternal priesthood given to him in this chapter, it may well be that was indicating that the lineage of who would be the high priest actually goes through his lineage.
What does stood before the ark mean? Doesn't that mean a priest?
Yeah,
he would have had to have been to be standing next to it.
Oh, yeah.
the only one who goes into the ark, of course, is the Kohen Haggadol.
Well, isn't he also too, well, you think because he also was wasn't he one that was going to go out when they built that altar over on the other side? Wasn't he the one that was ready to go over there and
Yeah.
wipe them out
Oh, when they,
on the other side of the Jordan?
when the
Yeah,
Reubenites.
he thought it was an altar instead of a marker.
All right, so let's do a translation comparison. This is from the Art Scroll. Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aharon the Cohen, turned back my wrath from the children of Israel when he zealously avenged me among them, so I didn't consume the children of Israel in my vengeance. Jewish publication says, Hashem, the Lord, spoke to Moses, saying, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the Cohen, has turned my anger away from the children of Israel by his zealously avenging me among them, so I didn't destroy the children because of my zeal. Here we have passion and passion. Here we have zealous and zeal again. Revised Standard Version says jealous, my jealousy, and my jealousy. And then ISR says ardent with my ardor, so I didn't destroy them in my ardor. Interesting. So what do all these mean? Jealousy, passion, ardor. What does all that mean?
Strong will and motion to go after and do something.
Yeah.
Fervent desire.
Yeah, for sure. Let's kind of see what happens here. Let's go back to Exodus 20, 1 through 5, Complete Jewish Bible. And what do we read here? I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the abode of slavery. You are to have no other gods before me. You are not to make for yourself the carved image or any kind of representation, anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or the water below or the shoreline. You are not to bow down to them or serve them. For I, Adonai, your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of their parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. So this is definitely tied to that. Excuse me. Observe what I am ordering you to do today. This is from Exodus 34, 11 through 17. I'm driving out ahead of you the Amori, the Kenai, the Hittite, the Perizi, the Hivi, the Yebusi. Be careful not to make a covenant with the people living in the land where you are going, so that they won't become a snare within your own borders. Rather, you are to demolish their altars, smash their standing stones, cut down their sacred poles, because you are not to bow down to any other god, since Adonai, whose very name is jealous, is a jealous God. Do not make a covenant with these people living in the land. It will cause you to go astray after their gods, to sacrifice to their gods. They will invite you to join them in eating their sacrifices, and you will take their daughters as wives for your sons, and their daughters will prostitute themselves to their own gods and make your sons do the same. Isn't that what just happened? So do we have here in Shemot prophecy of something that occurred in Bamidbar? That just happened. We talked about this last week. It's not on the slide here. One of the ways that explains in extra biblical text, for example, Talmud, that said the way they did it, the way Balaam couldn't curse the Israelites, but he said, "Hey, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you how you'll get them to curse themselves." And this is what you do. And one of the stories they said was that Israelites love to wear linen, and because it made them think they're rich, because rich people wore linen, and so they would set up tents with an old woman sitting outside and say, "Hey, don't you want to come in and buy some linen clothing? It's a really good price." And they'll say, "Sure," and they go into the tent. But in the tent is a young harlot, pretty little girl, selling clothes, but also other things. And that's how he got them to. But now, of course, you're not going to find that explanation in the Bible. That is tradition held down. But it makes sense. And Wayne and I discussed also, well, we discussed, and Wayne agreed he's seen it as well. I saw that very thing when I was stationed in Korea. That very thing. So, and, the Koreans are very talented. South Koreans are very talented people. They make any kind of clothing you want. Like they will draw an outline of your foot and make you the most comfortable pair of Nike shoes you've ever had, built specifically for your foot. They're very talented people. So you say, "Hey, you need a new pair of shoes? Come in here. We'll square you away." Anyway, moving on. Which command from Adonai did Pinchas obey when he thrust his spear?
For all the leaders to impale everyone who was connected with the veil of Peor.
Anybody else?
What was that not right?
It's connected to the sin of idolatry, of course, which is spiritual adultery for sure. But yeah.
That's what they were just told to do right before this happened. And he was the only one who actually did it.
To impale.
Remember in our last, because of the incident, joining themselves to Peor, at the Veil of Peor, God told all the leaders to get a spear and run through all who committed the idolatry with the women at Veil of Peor.
So that was before this?
It was right before this. And in fact, they should, in my opinion, shouldn't have split this from the other one. They should have had them together. And that's why they were all there weeping. Phinehas is the only one who fulfilled that.
So what my version here reads is a little bit different than that. It reads in 25 verse 4, Adonai said to Moshe, "Take all the chiefs of the people and hang them facing the sun before Adonai, so the raging fear of Adonai will turn away from Israel."
That's what I have to.
I said, he told the chiefs to do it. I was mistaken.
Yeah.
They were supposed to do that to the chiefs.
Yeah. Moshe said to the judges of Israel, "Each one of you kill his men who were joined to Baal Peor." Yeah, that's it.
That should have been part of this week's.
But it's specific to Moshe, the judge of Israel. Each of you is to put to death those in his tribe who have joined themselves to Baal Peor.
Yeah.
And this guy's from Shimon, not from
his own tribe.
From his own tribe.
Yeah, from Levi.
But no, what I mean.
Yeah, but still, they were all there bawling.
He's not the only one that should have been doing it.
Yeah, and then here comes the very act that he was talking against.
Yeah.
It should have been someone from Shimon.
Should have been, yeah. And so the question
But
is,
he was a priest.
who all should have been involved with Pinchas's actions?
Everybody.
That's all the
All y'all.
leaders. All of y'all.
And I think that's one of the hardest commandments to carry out is, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it just shows,
Well, they'd done it before. Levi did it at the golden calf.
right? But you know, if it was your brother or sister or your cousin or your mother or father, I mean, that's.
Just got to
Well,
do
the only ones that did it, the golden calf, were Levi.
Mhm.
And that's why the priesthood changed. And so Levi is here doing it again instead of for the children of Israel in their place.
That kind of brings up an interesting point too, in this day and time when we don't have a Sanhedrin or obviously, you know, we're not led by godly leaders or anything like that. How do you react to people that are involved in idolatry or,
Well,
you know, saying,
You can definitely get wisdom from that in the Ketuvim Netzarim by sending them out of your assemblies.
Because this, I really feel like these commandments to do things, to kill people, that's when God is the king of Israel, you know what I mean? And God is not the king of Israel, the officially, official leader of Israel at this moment. So it's like,
but it
What do you
is
do?
also to the reason he was so strong. I feel like it was because it spreads like a cancer
absolutely,
so
absolutely.
quickly. And that if you don't do something, you know, if there's somebody in your assembly or in your family or your house, you're pretty soon your whole family is going to be,
Yep.
affected by it, you know what I'm saying?
Cece asked and maybe answered the question. She says, who should have been involved? All of Israel.
See, that's a good answer. Just so you know, I'm sure you're tracking everything. You're just playing with tiny little coins and
She's
stuff.
totally fine. Like she doesn't put things in her mouth.
Oh, well, I
like,
still
usually.
do, so that's fine. Just curious.
No, she's
That's good.
doing really, really good.
To answer everyone, the persistent, stiff-necked attitude toward idolatry will bring about death and exile. See Vayiqra 26:30 on the next slide, right? I will destroy your high places and cut down your pillars for sun worship and throw your carcasses on the carcasses of your idols. And I will detest you and I will lay waste to your cities and make your sanctuaries desolate so as not to smell your fragrant aromas. I will desolate the land so that your enemies living will be astounded by it. Everyone should have been involved. Thanks, Cece. Let's talk about some Jots and Tiddles. These are some of the ones that you might see, anomalies, textual anomalies in the Masoretic Text. Not necessarily, something to hang your hat on, but there's some really interesting things. And these are 4 that we'll find in this Torah portion. And we're not going to go through them all one right after the other, but they will go in this order when we get to them. So we'll start with the small Yud. You can see there the name Pinchas in the first verse in 25:11 has that tiny Yod. You see the size of the other Yod just to the right of it in Vaidaber. So see that. So I also brought, I made a copy of, I'll just pass this around. I made a copy of column 185, which is where Pinchas starts. And I've got some arrows that you can do a comparison. If you take a look at line number 6, I have an arrow pointing to that small Yud. So what this is right here is what a sofer would use. So this is what I use when I'm working on my Torah scroll. I can see each letter and I hold it right underneath and I go letter by letter to make sure it's exactly right according to this. This is the same information that every sofer stam uses in this right here. So you can see in line 6 the small Yud. And then as we get down into another one, you saw the broken Vav. You'll be able to find that in line 10. So if you want to just take a look at that. And this does contain the set apart name. So just so you know, but you might want to see it. The small Yud right there. The letter Yud means a hand or a closed hand, Yad. You use the Yad to when you're reading a Torah scroll. Or you might say Al Yadi HaElohim, by the hand of God, that kind of thing, right? So Pinchas was Aaron's grandson and a priest of Israel just before crossing the land, and he had to contend with the error which in Israel due to the teaching of Balaam. Pinchas slew one of the sons of Simeon and his wife. It averted God's plague upon Israel, and Pinchas was granting something we are all hoping for, which is covenant of peace, right? So the small yud seems to indicate that small works with our hands for God go a long way toward things for the kingdom. That's by Monty Judah. And you see the disclaimer down there. We don't always necessarily agree with everything Monty says, but some of his comments on textual anomalies are really interesting. I mean, some of them do seem kind of insightful. So take care of the small things, and they can go a long way in the kingdom. I think it's pretty neat. So what's the danger with an act like what Pinchas did? Well, number one, summary executions without witnesses are against the justice prescribed by Torah, right?
Yeah, but God told them to do that.
God did tell him to do that,
And they all
Kind
were
of.
witnessing it.
but
They were all witnessing.
Kind of.
they were all witnesses of it. For Pinchas, his spontaneous killing, though, as a prince of the tribe of Shimon, a killing of a prince of the tribe of Shimon meant that an avenger of blood would be well within his rights to demand that the elders hand him over to be killed. How do you feel about
I
that?
don't think so in this case. Not when it comes straight from the order of God, right then.
If we go back to
Well,
Devarim,
tell me where the specific order is to kill the prince of Shimon for a Levite.
Well, I guess I can't.
And see, that's the point of this, is that someone said, well, you weren't specifically told to kill this guy because you're
a Levite.
a Levite, he's from Shimon. You're supposed to not just kill him, you're supposed to do what? Hang him facing the sun. It doesn't say he did that.
Yeah, it said he rammed his spear through
So there is a danger.
Well, it says impale.
Okay.
through their
Toward
belly.
the sun, though. Their sun is in the text. So it's not just kill them in the tent, it's to do follow up.
How do we know he didn't do that?
Well, how do you know? Right, but it doesn't say that he did.
Right.
But that's like other things where we say, oh, this is against Torah. Why did God have them do it? Well, because God said to do it.
Well, we can see that I don't think that, I don't think that he did anything against what God said to do. In a situation such as this, when God doesn't say directly to do this, Pinchas's act, you may think yourself to be righteously doing something, but you might just be committing murder instead. And that's why
It's happened in history over and
people
over.
do that all the time. Are there any other examples in history of God telling someone to do something and, killing them would be killing someone without a trial, without the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses typically is what?
Murder.
Yes, it's a judgment without
Judgment without trial.
trial. And so that's the problem here of being we over the years, and I haven't seen any lately, but there used to be some essentially white supremacist groups out there that would call themselves Sons of Pinchas or something like that. The Phineas priesthood, things like that were basically saying, we don't trust the judgment of the earthly courts. We're going to take vengeance on our own.
Take
And
it in our own hands.
Yeah, and so that's the danger of feeling yourself to be so righteous that you can go ahead and commit these acts.
But in this case,
But in this case,
God approved it
right?
by
So
giving him a blessing.
Fortunately for
Who are
him.
we to say he was in danger?
we can say that because what did Pinchas get out of
So
this?
you wouldn't have done it.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying what Pinchas received some things as a result of doing this act. Probably for his protection, covenant of peace, for example, which would alleviate the vengeance, the avenger of blood. Which
Well, isn't it like, though, okay, like say an example, in time of war? I mean, you know what I'm saying, like when people kill it, they don't get a witness or a trial or anything like that. We go to war. Or like, say, for example, when, I guess it was in the Haftorah. Is that why it was in the Haftorah? Where Elisha and Jehu, when you execute all the sons of
The
Ahab,
priest of,
Mhm.
but without a trial.
well, also didn't kind of Elijah do that at Mount Carmel when he killed all the priests of Baal? I mean, I don't know what the details were, but I mean, that was like 400 people, and I don't know if they held a trial.
Well,
or
in that
anything.
particular case, the difference between that and this is we're talking about our own kinsmen versus the prophets of Baal. And it was still a dangerous act to do. He wasn't told to specifically do that, but he did. But think about this. Aaron's two sons weren't told to bring fire before the Lord, but they did, and they died. I'm just saying that this is a dangerous thing that he did, and it could have went the other way. I mean, it didn't in this case,
Well, and
but it could have gone the other way.
And it says, okay, so then an Israelite man brought into his family a Midianite woman right before the eyes of Moses and the whole assembly of Israel while they were weeping at the entrance of the tents of meeting. And Pinchas son of Eleazar, the priest, saw this. He left the assembly, took a spear in hand, and followed the Israelite into the tent. So apparently, this man he was in the tent of meeting.
Don't know that for sure, that it was in the tent of meeting.
Yeah, I've heard it presented both ways. So I was like, if it was in the tent of meeting, and like that would, to me, that would be like, I mean, maybe he was trying to take her before the Ark of the Covenant.
Maybe.
But I
Then
don't know.
definitely that would be if that were the case,
Which would justify.
that's why a Levite doing that as defenders
Yeah.
of the tabernacle.
Exactly, and that's I think that was my point, because if you just follow them into their own tent, it wouldn't make much sense, but like,
Well, they've been told that they're not to associate with these pagans
Yeah.
and the Baal Peor sort
Yeah.
of thing. So it was,
Fortunately for him, it turned out in his favor. But I think
well,
the covenant of peace was what he got from it, because
right.
he could have lost his life over that.
Mm.
But I don't know, I gave him, like we're going to talk about, did give him the covenant of peace.
well, and certainly with the plague stopped, it's obviously saying you did the right thing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
Right.
There's no, we're not saying he didn't do the right thing there, it's just that it was,
But I can't imagine he would have known that. He just saw red, fire in his eyes, and picked it up.
well, first verse say that he thwarted my anger.
Thwarted my anger, yeah.
Because he acted on behalf of my,
Jealousy.
you know,
or
my jealousy, my zeal, whatever the phrase
Right.
of Kentucky is.
Right. Still a dangerous thing if you pour. I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it. I'm not saying I would, but here's a good lesson. Don't try that today, right now,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
yes, but I'm just saying, I think we are suffering from a lack of courage sometimes today.
it's a good point. We are, but
And that's one, in my view, I think this is one of my favorite passages from Broken Vav. I don't know if you have that slide in here or not, but when there are no other men,
I did not put that in here. Be a man.
be a man.
When there are no men around, be a man.
Cowboy up.
Yeah. Let's see. So the cities of refuge had not been established. Another reason why I mean, it could have been a dangerous thing. Fortunately, it wasn't. So how should the elders determine a motive in such a case? Is it really righteous zeal or a cover for murder?
Well, okay, isn't it true that, okay, what was going on wasn't just adultery, it was also to idolatry.
Idolatry, which is
So if it
spiritual
had-
adultery.
If it had only been adultery, I'm just trying to say that the, you know, idolatry carries a huge, I mean, saying it would be right up there with murder, would it not? I mean, wouldn't it? I mean,
Sure.
as far as,
Right,
I
I
do
mean,
think that maybe
of
the
the,
fact,
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, of the sins that you, according to traditional Judaism understanding of life verses, you can not commit adultery,
yeah,
murder,
Idolatry.
or idolatry.
To save your own
but
life.
they all carry the death penalty, right? Or do they? But on the same token, you have to have a witness, but idolatry, I don't know, it just seems like it's such a serious, I don't know, I mean, it's like murder, if you see someone about ready to murder someone, you can,
Yeah, well, self-defense is a defense of that, just like, I mean, you could say Pinchas was doing this for self-defense, he was defending
yeah, that's what I mean.
people of Israel from this plague, which was caused by other people of Israel causing,
It's a
doing these
direct
things.
cause of
Yeah.
other people dying.
Yeah. And so Pinchas was in other words, the danger for us of doing this is kind of as a one-off with that. You don't see a mitzvah of stabbing people with a spear as a commandment because of that. You don't see this kind of command from God that says, kill these people right away. was, and we look at, well, why did 24,000 people die? We could say that, well, in every case, when there's a command to do some sort of violent action, the reason always comes back to preserving the children of Israel. It's for their own good. Had they acted when they were supposed to, the 24,000 people probably wouldn't have died. And certainly if the leader, the prince of Shimon and Cosby, had they not walked in there at that point in time, they wouldn't have been killed, right? So if Shimon's son, what was his name, Zimri, excuse me, yeah. If he had done that, he would have, he probably would have been on the death penalty anyway, himself, because he was one of those that said, well, he would be under the death penalty of take all the chiefs of the people and hang them facing the sun. So he's already under death penalty already. Maybe he was just thinking in his perspective, perhaps I'm under death penalty anyway. I might as well go out with some, he's already dead.
Yeah,
He's a dead man walking when he walked through there.
Well, but that does bring up, when someone does defend, like say if someone walked in here with a gun and started to, wanted to kill someone, obviously.
They would die in a crossfire.
Exactly. So,
They would die.
Right, so that is just, that is good, and that is
Right.
righteous.
Yeah.
In my eyes.
Ours too.
Right. I mean, that's the case for self-defense. You don't have to have the trial and the witnesses if an act of those kind of things is going on, particularly in a murderous event. I mean, I don't know that today we would necessarily shoot someone who is committing idolatry.
Right, but like you said, it was causing the death of, saying it was almost as if they were pulling, saying what they were doing was directly related to the death of all these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And-
So it stopped it.
Well, do you think maybe the fact, I know this is kind of a stretch, but considering that whole incident at Peor came out of Balaam's attempt to, cause the people to curse themselves, that was kind of an act of war against the Israelites. So does that mean that was, maybe this scenario was more like a war scenario? Like, what is that saying they have in all the war books? Spies are shot. So was Zimri kind of thought of as like a defector or a spy? And is that what gave Phinehas the courage to say, hey, you've crossed, well, not to say it, but to think he's crossed a line here of loyalty and he has to be killed?
You can certainly speculate that, but
That's just a thought, like
You have
maybe
to be
was that
careful
was
with it.
running through his mind, was that this person is
Yeah.
disloyal, they're a defector to their
simply
country.
doesn't say.
And was it what he was doing, like just that he had this Midianite woman with him, or was it the fact that having that woman with him meant that they were, quote unquote, joined to Peor or Baal Peor? I don't know.
Well, we do know that, that was the teaching of Balaam to subvert Israel by causing the curse themselves, which would arguably be an act of war, they quote a fifth column kind of thing. And so maybe in that regard, I don't think that that much justification went through Pinchas' mind. Of course, I'm speculating here, but it seems like basically his training kicked in, and we knew immediately what he had to do. He'd been there. He heard the command, and his training kicked in, saying this.
Yeah.
We're
not saying he did the wrong thing here.
Absolutely not.
But
Obviously
what
not.
we are saying is that it was a pretty dangerous move if you take all the facts into consideration.
And I think he would, if you ask him, he'd say maybe so, but I knew what right was. I knew that Adonai plus me equals majority.
And he must have been ready to die himself for taking that act on. So since Pinchas was a Cohen, how does this affect his duties in the service in the tabernacle? In the tabernacle.
I think some of the commentaries say that he's not named as being taken in the
Right.
as being part of the actual priestly. Had not been.
I don't have an answer. This was
Had not been
Midrash
ordained as
question.
a priest
Drash
at this
out.
point.
Yeah.
And so maybe in terms of how old he was, maybe he was just at the age where he had never actually taken on the priestly duties, but he knew
Yeah.
what the mission was.
Let's talk about Pinchas's awards and decorations. His good conduct medal. Did he get it or not? His meritorious unit citation.
As long as
His IDF achievement medal. The Covenant of Peace award. And the eternal priesthood commendation. Talk about the broken Vav here. See how that is? You can in the word shalom there. And if you take a look at the page on the tikkun, you can see it. It's really small, but you can see it actually written in there. Little broken Vav, and that's how they do it. And the actual line there is Lachen amor hine lo et briti shalom. Therefore I say, behold, I give you my covenant of peace. And within the words covenant of peace is that broken Vav. And so throughout Sofrim Halakha, it's stressed that, I explained this a little earlier, that the letters of a Sefer Torah must be written as a complete good for body, except for the Kof and the Hey, which they do have breaks. And additionally, if the letters are faded or partially illegible, that makes the entire scroll pasul or not good. You can't use the entire scroll if the letters are faded or you partially can't see them. But in this particular case, to this rule, the Vav in the word shalom has that broken Vav. But interesting about that is from Yom Tov ben Avraham Ishbili of Spain, says it must be written with a break in the vertical line. So this is back 1250 to 1330. And some say it's a small Vav or a normal Vav, but a little shorter in the front. So there's tons and tons of different opinions about that. Something very interesting is the Yemenite Sofrim, the guys that write Torah scrolls, the Yemenites, they don't keep this tradition of making that broken Vav. And here is a picture. This is interesting. The Masoretes must have been shocked by the violence of Pinchas, and it may be that they deliberately attempted to diminish Pinchas's blessing by writing the broken Vav, citing true peace cannot be brought about through violence, and that the two concepts are incompatible. And that's from Mordechai Pinchas. He is a Sofer Stam, and he's done research. And I found this picture. What's interesting about this is a snippet of a Yemenite Torah scroll. And what's two interesting things. Number one, there's no broken Vav there. But number two, it's interesting that the letters appear blue. Because it is a rule of Sofrim that they must be black. And the ink must be made of gallnuts to be a kosher ink. And it will be black. But this Yemenite scroll has it in blue, and there's no. So this gives way to my personal thoughts. Number one, we know that the Masoretic text is not the original text, and so there could be anomalies and changes. I don't know. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but the important thing in my mind here is get the Torah on paper or on parchment so everybody has it. Get it out there so you can read the words and you know what it says. We don't need to pay attention to the textual anomalies. They're neat. They're pretty cool, I think, in my mind. They're certainly not going to change the message of salvation, in my mind also. And maybe someone else would disagree with me on that.
I'm so mad they're using Tefillah as the dye.
Yeah, maybe they are. From Woad. Anyway, that's a little snippet from a Yemenite. So here's something else. Therefore, this is from a wise man. He says, here's what I think. The covenant of peace is not connected, not yet connected. But this Vav, which is the number of man, 6, will be restored when the covenant of peace is fully in place. And those 3 sets of scripture there back up that opinion.
Is he in that line of Zadok? I mean, is he?
Who's
Is
that?
that his?
Zadok?
I mean, not
Zadok-
his Phineas, is Zadokian, is it?
Is that
So
on the
don't-
line of Phineas?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because that one wasn't supposed to be for Revelation.
What would make you think of that?
Well, because the covenant piece
Oh,
forever.
okay. Yeah, gotcha.
It would seem likely to me that that the Zadokite priesthood descends from Pinchas'
You know,
line.
it would be kind of
Kinda-
needs. you
kinda
know,
does,
'cause-
yeah.
I think that would, I think the answer would be yes. Well, we can take a look at it, but I'm pretty sure the answer would be yes.
I don't know, though.
Yeah.
Bamidbar
Do you know,
25,
Jim,
12,
you know
13.
probably the most about the Zadokite priesthood.
Mhm.
You probably know the most of us about the Zadokite priesthood, do you?
Did it come? Is his line? Did it come from him?
I'm afraid to speak. I'm afraid Addie might.
She won't.
Stop being mean, Hattie.
I will.
She's giving me a compliment.
Well,
Drink some more.
that's what a good midrash is. You know, we got differing opinions and we talk it out, right? I think it's good, healthy discussion. So my covenant of peace, eternal priesthood, will demonstrate my gratitude and goodwill toward Phinehas. The pledge of my covenant should be seen as the greeting one sends to a person, to one who is indebted. That's according to Rashi. Can't imagine. I mean, it's neat that the greeting would be, of someone who is indebted, but anyway, that's Rashi. Alternatively, this covenant of peace was a pledge that Phinehas would be protected from the ire of Zimri's kinsman. And that is from Ibn Ezra. The gap in the Masoretic Text. Vayiqra achari hamagafa. It was now after the plague. And then the next one you can see, so if we start on the right on the top line, boom, and then we finish there. So Vayiqra is the second line. And then hamagafa is the last word, and then we have a gap. And we start over. Now, typically, in a gap like that, they'll do it. You'll see them all over. Like, for example, you can see them, 3 or 4 of them on this page, right? It just happens. God spoke to Moses, Eleazar, the son of the priest, saying, and that's what it is. And then the next thing, of course, this is from Monty. Every scribe intentionally and carefully places a gap of text at this point in the Torah. It has the same effect as a moment of silence in a speech. It draws particular attention to what is said next. Now, I'm just going to say, as an aspiring messianic sophistom, I cannot find any evidence to back that up whatsoever. Because there are gaps like that all over, and they don't necessarily mean like that. And also for the commentary to say, every scribe intentionally and carefully places that gap. In my mind, that's a bit of a stretch, because Sofer Stam doesn't have the ability to say, well, I think I'm going to add this, or I'm going to move these over just a little bit. He copies it exactly how he sees it. So I guess in one way that is the case. But for this particular passage that they carefully and intentionally, to me it's just a bit of a stretch, because they do carefully and intentionally draw every single character of every single column. So a little bit, like we said before, we don't always necessarily agree. But going along with Monty's idea here, I did find an interesting quote from Rashi that I liked. And that is, after the plague, at least one of the tribe was seriously diminished, and this is concerning the census. The divine command to number the Israelites at this juncture may be likened to the case of a shepherd whose flocks have been depleted by an inrush of wolves. And when the catastrophe is over, the shepherd lovingly counts his sheep in order to know how many are left alive. So I don't particularly care for a bunch of Rashi stuff, but in this case, I do like it, because there's the break is, now the plague is over. Make a census of the people.
Right.
The smoke is cleared. Let's see who's left standing. That was pretty neat. So it kind of goes along with what Monty was saying there. But as far as the way he explained it, to me, it's kind of a stretch. And in my mind, it's a stretch to call this gap in the text a textual anomaly. So that's just my opinion. I don't believe it is an anomaly. I think it's just how it worked out. And another thing too, you kind of got to be careful. If there wasn't a gap somewhere, we're not going to have 42 lines of text. We're going to have 41 or 40. So we're careful. In every column, there's 42 lines in every column of the Torah. 42 is an important number. Of course, how many stops were there between leaving Egypt and crossing over to the Promised Land?
41.
41 if there wasn't a gap, right?
So this is a gap theory.
That's the.
There was something about that.
Wait a minute. All right, let's talk about the census. Take a census of all the sons of Israel, 20 years old and upward. Anybody got any questions about that gap thing? Or have a different opinion? Because this is the time to make it known. 20 years upward from their father's household, whoever is able to go out to war in Israel, take a census. And the census is taken, and there are 601, 730 Israelites, not counting Levi. And why didn't we count Levi?
No inheritance in the land.
Let's take a look at the census. So in the second column, you see the census they took in Bamidbar chapter 1. And then in the third column, you see the census they took in Bamidbar chapter 26, and then the delta. And we'll get to the rest of the tribes in a minute. So you can kind of see here, Reuben lost 2,770, Simeon lost 37,100. Interestingly, Judah gained 1,900 people. Issachar gained almost 10,000. Zebulun gained 3,100. Ephraim lost 8,000, and Manasseh gained 20,500 people between the two censuses.
And how far apart in time were those two sentences?
It's hard to say. Pretty hard to say. Yeah. A lot had happened in between there, right? So
It's close to 40 years, probably.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
maybe at
All right.
least
Well, that
40
makes
years.
sense.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
but it is hard to say.
So that's not, so that is even reflecting all the ones 20 years and younger who died in the desert.
Yes, sir. And yeah, it would be, and of course the ones who died in the plague and that kind of thing. So yeah, it does.
So what does that mean?
What does what mean?
Does that mean that there was more people involved in the plague from those tribes which lost? Is that what you're saying?
No, not necessarily. I'm just saying that there's the deltas between the two censuses. It's interesting to see who lost the most people, and who gained the most people. Benjamin gained 10,200 people, and Dan gained 1,700. Asher gained 11,900. I guess I forgot the plus sign. And Naphtali lost 8,000. But in the grand scheme of things, if you count total number of Israelites, only 1,820. So as we gain more people, more children were being born and raised, and within that age group, the more they sin and they start losing people. So after 40 years, or we're speculating at this point, after this amount of time between this census and this census, they're down 1,820 people when they should have been up a lot, right?
So basically, yeah, they're down 1,800, but in light of how many there were, basically it wasn't a real big change.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't just a real big change, right? Simeon lost 37,000 though. The tribe of Simeon took a big hit.
So does it say anywhere the number of people that were lost during the plague? During that plague?
24,000.
24,000.
Okay.
That's just that plague.
Just that plague.
There were others.
Not
Yeah.
kind of
So are you saying it would imply that Simeon
geese.
might have been more involved than the others?
That is the prevailing theory. They got hit pretty hard. So there you have
It
it.
doesn't make sense given that Cosby and
Zimri.
Zimri
Because they
Zimri was
followed, yeah.
Shimonite.
From 603, 550 to 601, 730. So anyway, I thought that was a pretty cool little comparison. Dividing the land. Adonai, any questions on that before we move on? Okay. Adonai said to Moshe, the land is to be parceled out among these as a possession to be inherited according to the number of names. To those families with more persons, you're to give a greater inheritance, and to those with fewer, you're to give smaller inheritance. Each family's inheritance to be according to the number counted in it. However, the land is to be awarded by lot. They will inherit it according to the names of the tribes of their ancestors. but the inheritance is to be parceled out by lot between the families with more and those with fewer. So in this case, you can think of, all right, it's just me and my wife, so Kimbrells, you get 2 acres. Ingalls, you get 2 acres because it's just you two. Soborowski's, you get 17 acres. I'm just kidding. Right. It's and it's going to come out by a lot. So you don't know, you're going to get your 9 acres, but you don't know where it is yet because we haven't cast a lot for it. And so this is just a thing from the Chumash Binmar Kahot from Chabad, kind of saying the land of Israel was divided in 3 ways: by population, by lot, and by inheritance. Just a cool little chart, I guess. The census of the Levites. So the Levites were counted, right? But just not in the regular census. And that's why I worded the kids' question that way. Why were they not counted in the regular census? Those who were numbered of them were 23,000, every male from a month old and upward, for they were not numbered among the sons of Israel, since no inheritance was given to them among the sons of Israel. So here is the census of the Levites. You can see the census from Bamidbar 3. They actually took and counted out how many people from each of the Gershonites, the Chahats, and Merari, from Merari. So it was 22,300. And then when they did it again, Bamidbar 26, it was 23,000, right? So all that were numbered Levites, Moses and Aaron numbered the commandment of the Lord by their families. All the males from a month old and upward were 22,000. So that's 22,000. So interestingly, you see the numbers there, 22,300, 22,000, but focus on that 22,300 for a second from back up in Bamidbar 3. Why does the census say 22,300? Or why does it say 22,000? But when you add it up, there's 22,300. Can we remember? Did we talk about that?
I think so.
In that Torah portion, I remember. So I wanted to see if I didn't put the answer up here just to see if anyone remembers. The answer can be found kind of in the next little bit afterwards. Does anybody
Is that
remember
the
why?
Korach deal?
Oh no, but that's a good guess. No.
So you don't double count firstborns.
There we go. Yep. Don't count the firstborns. Remember, there was a census of the firstborns. So it is. They assume on this particular case that 300 of the 22,300 were firstborns, so they are not counted in the census. That's why the Torah says 22,000, and when you add them up, it's 22,300.
You said some very large families then.
Yeah.
Korah, was he the son of who? Was he, which clan did he belong?
You see
Gershonite.
Gershonite, yeah, because Kohat is on.
Mm-hmm.
And
He was a
this is
Gershonite.
after the rebellion of Korah, this census was.
All right, let's talk about any questions on this? I just put it up there, just interesting. So from Bamidbar 3 to Bamidbar 26, they're from 22,000 to 23,000. So about 1,000 additional people in however long a span it was. The daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Heper, the son of Galad, son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, of the families of Manasseh, Yosef, the sons were, the names of his daughters, Machlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. Anybody know what the name Milcah means?
The female of Melech, or king or queen.
It means
Oh,
queen. It means queen. Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Good job. Our father died in the desert. He wasn't part of the group. Give us his property, it says. We want our land. Moshe brought the case before Adonai, and he answered, you must give them property to be inherited along with that of their fathers, passed to them. Say to the people of Israel, if a man dies and does not have a son, you'd have his inheritance passed to his daughter. If he doesn't have a daughter, give his inheritance to his brother, so on and so forth. We read. It's pretty interesting about that. So,
Since verse 8 is included in there, is that what they got section 8 housing from?
ba-doom-ching. You're going to get in trouble.
I know. Well,
Tell them all.
That's long.
Here's another textual anomaly, the enlarged Nun Sofit. Not on this page here, but. So Nun Sofit, Nun is one of the letters that has a final form, which means that's how it appears at the end of a word. And in this case, it seems to be much bigger than a regular Nun Sofit. And so these are some of the comments here that we got. The letter Nun means life or the quickening of life. And Monty's commentary says the letter was used previously by Moses in presenting the 13 attributes of God's mercy in Exodus 34:7. However, this is a Nun Sofit, and it is at the end of a word, and it is drawn as a Sofit to indicate that. The context of this passage is about the daughters of Manasseh who had no male counterparts to receive the tribal inheritance. They appealed to Moses, and he made their case as inheritance as a result, and their inheritance was assured. So Monty says, going back to Exodus 35:7, the enlarged Nun was there to present the 10th attribute of God. The attribute describes how God preserves our heritage and inheritance, the mercy extended to our forefathers. Therefore, the enlarged Nun here speaks to the inheritance of our fathers, our heritage being preserved, even when a physical recipient is missing in the lineage. It's pretty interesting. So I went and I searched a little bit. I found just another view. It may or may not be anything. Like I told you how I feel about the textual anomalies. Interestingly, it's the only place where this spelling occurs there. Another view is that the symbolic meaning of the Nun include endurance, faithfulness, and constancy in soul. By attaching a Nun Sofit to this word in this place may lead us possibly to the following passage, which is Luke 21:19. Possess your lives by your endurance. And the daughters inherited their father's land due to their patient endurance. And we as followers of Yeshua must have that same sort of patient endurance. See it through to the end. It's just another view. I'm not telling you it's right.
I kind of like that look in terms of the feminine form here.
Yeah.
Definitely shows that, when there are no other men, be a woman, so to speak.
Oh my goodness.
Well, a sense of, in other words, if there's not a man to stand in for that inheritance, the females
Go
can
get it.
inherit.
Yeah, they
as
can
well.
still go
They
get
can still, it's not going to lose out because of that.
And so in this case, and this also gives credence to, you always hear people who just first get started in, quote, Old Testament studies, how, well, their women weren't treated with very much respect.
You compare the Bible to any other ancient text, how the God of Israel treats his females is vastly an improvement over any other
You bet.
ancient culture.
In my mind, it debunks their ideas that,
Absolutely.
oh, yeah, they were treated like goats.
No,
No.
sure weren't.
They could be property owners.
Yep, absolutely.
So, wrong. Try again, Chief.
Inherent land. Can you look in Babylon? Does any woman own land in Babylon? Probably not, unless she was like a queen. I don't know.
Right.
It just.
So this is interesting that you say that. When I was a police officer in North Carolina, when a married man can go buy a house and sign all the paperwork, the house belongs to him, he pays for it, whatever. But when it comes time to sell that house, the wife's signature is also required. Even though she has no ownership in it whatsoever, her name's not on any of the dockets or the deeds or the paperwork. It takes one to buy, but two to sell back in there. And I got called to a real estate office because there was a man there trying to sell a house of an apostate religion. Not going to say which one it was, but they were saying, hey, we need to have your wife's signature here also. And he was irate and started breaking things and throwing things. And I can remember when we got there saying, my wife has the rights of a goat. That's where I got that from, the goat. And I had to take him in. I had to take him to jail for destruction of property. But yeah, I remember
That
that.
sounds like the religion of a 7th century caravan robber. I'm not for sure, though.
It is, but I'm not going to say which one it is. So anyway,
Weren't his daughters required, though, that when they did marry, they married within the tribe? So that the land couldn't go to
I
another
think that was the
tribe?
whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
That's a good
can
point.
inherit, but it needs to stay within the tribal footprint.
Land can't be transferred from one tribe to another,
Yeah.
even through,
So you're Manasseh, you're going to marry someone from Manasseh's
Yeah.
line. You're not marrying a Benjamite.
Well, no, if only if you are the sole property owner.
Yeah.
Or the sole inheritor of the land. Otherwise, you could marry freely with them because
Who- yeah,
because
whoever,
you're not
I
gonna.
guess, yeah.
That's what always confused me about Elizabeth and Mary and Joseph, you know what I'm saying? Because they were cousins, but yet they were different tribes. You know what I'm saying?
Elizabeth marrying
I mean,
Joseph.
It has nothing to do with it, I'm sorry. You know, they were Levites and, Yeshua, Mary, or Joseph
Mary
was from
and
the tribe of
Elizabeth were
Judah.
cousins.
Mary and Elizabeth were cousins. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's always confusing because I thought they had to marry within the tribe.
Yeah, because, yeah, especially Zechariah had to marry a Levite, a daughter of Levi, because he was high priest.
So it made
but
you
that
think
was a
Mary-
special rule for the priests.
No, yeah.
Other women from one tribe could marry a man from
So
another
like
tribe.
Mary was like a Levite that married Joseph, and he was the tribe of Judah. Is that what we're saying?
Well, she wouldn't have any priestly duties.
No, yeah. I'm just what I think Connie's trying to say is how did Elizabeth was a Levite and married, and because Elizabeth had to be a Levite because the high priest had to marry a Levite. So how did Mary be of the tribe of Judah? When
How would
she
they
must
relate?
have been a
It's
Levite and then married Joseph, who was of the tribe of
Right.
Judah, probably. I would assume.
Yeah,
That's always confusing
good.
because I thought they had to marry within the tribes.
Well, now everyone's everywhere, so. Yeah. Let's see, where are we at? Hoshua, son of Nun. Moshe did as Adonai had ordered him. He took Yehoshua and put him before Eleazar the Cohen and the whole community and laid his hands on him and commissioned him as Adonai had said through Moshe. Now, this is important. We see this a lot, this next comment here. Laying hands on people is not a new thing, obviously. And it is biblical to do so, and we do that here. Commissioned him, the Hebrew word savah, which is the three-letter root from which the word mitzvah is derived. And the same word in a different form, tzav, begins with Bamidbar 28:2, which we read today.
Does it also come from the same as Tzavot?
No,
No, it's not the same thing.
no, Tzava'ot is the word for hosts.
Right. Well, so it's
But,
Yeah, but not mitzvah, like
just armies,
tzav.
yeah, it's not the same,
Yeah.
that's what, Tzav, yeah.
The interesting thing, doesn't mean anything really. Transfer of power from Moses to the guy who's taken over. The transfer of power in our Haftorah from Elijah. Elisha
To Elisha.
both took place on the plains of Moab.
Did it really?
Oh, yeah, that's good. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that is
Gotta
good.
be why they're connected. Why that's his Haftorah. Yeah.
Probably, could one of the reasons.
The offerings. Adonai said to Moshe, give an order to the people, tell them you're to take care to offer me at the proper time food presented to me as offerings made by fire, fragrant aroma. What are the proper time? The proper time? Well, we're talking about the appointed times, right? Daily or continual, the Sabbath, Rosh Chodesh, and the feast days. What is a holy convocation? Going back.
Set apart gathering.
Convention, you mean?
It's a holy convention.
A holy convention. That was so awesome. Hey, it works. Like the
Was that-
word works.
Was she?
Doesn't
like,
it?
Was that in her Bible or did she just
No.
use everything?
She didn't have her glasses on.
It still works. We're having a convention right now. I'm all for it. So, what is a Chodesh Mikra?
Set apart reading.
Set apart gathering, right? Give attention to public reading of Scripture. Very good. When Paul wrote to Timothy, he was being walked out in this manner. For Moses, from ancient generations, has had in every city those who preach him, since he is read in the synagogues every Shabbat. Set apart gathering. Do something to set it apart. That's what we do, right? On Sabbath. And here are the offerings we talked about. Those are the bulls, 13 bulls, 12 bulls, 11 bulls, 10 bulls, 9 bulls, 8 bulls, 7 bulls. Shmini Atzeret, 1 bull equals 70 bulls.
Priests were very busy.
Yeah, they were.
Mhm.
Yeah, they were.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's a lot of animals.
I was wanting to ask a question about that when you're,
Yeah, go ahead, ask.
well, I was just wondering why, okay, on Shabbat, is that on Shabbat? I don't know if we're in the right place. Okay. I'm sorry, I think it's gonna come late.
How's it gonna come later? You don't know what's next.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, what is the thing behind offering sacrifices on this? What is the underlying thing with the sacrifices in the temple being so important that it even eclipses the rest of the Shabbat?
And not working on stuff.
What is the, you know what I'm saying, that, the ideal there?
Oh, why does the continual sacrifice have to happen?
Yes,
Well, number one, God says so, right?
right.
But also, what happens to the meat that is sacrificed there?
Oh, you know that.
That's the sustenance of the priests.
People are fed by it.
Oh, because are you saying like they didn't have the chance to prepare like the other, because they were so.
No, but that's their,
They got to feed all the
It's their
Levites.
job. They can't go out hunting.
Well,
They
that's
don't-
not because they
raise
didn't have the
crops.
chance to prepare all the.
Yeah, they don't have
Like
farms or
everyone
anything yet.
And the
Right.
thing of these sacrifices are lambs, correct? Like the morning and evening sacrifices are lambs. And so the blood of the lamb is continually applied on the altar. That would make sense.
That's, yeah, I just figured there was some kind of, maybe a sewed meaning there or something. I don't know,
It means the dinner bell.
a mystery.
I think the sewed is when you look at the
Mysteries
70,
only we know.
though,
The 70 would be,
$39.99.
the sowed interpretation is right here, right? Sages point out that these 70 bulls are representative of the 70 nations of mankind. These bulls prophetically point toward the time prophesied by Zechariah, when all the nations that attacked Israel will go to Jerusalem for Sukkot year after year.
Or else.
Oh, you should.
Yeah, or else, yeah.
no rain.
Next
Just live by the ocean.
door portion is Matot Maseh, double portion. Anybody want to guess when that happens?
Next week.
Next Sabbath, yeah. Hey, we got Sukkot coming up. Want to invite you.
Oh, thank
I got your email now. We're not doing a regular camp out Sukkot like normal. We're going to, I'll tell you something. Have you been here before? At this place?
This building.
At
This
this building?
building? Yeah, it's been a minute, but
It's been
yeah.
a while. So we're going to do Sukkot this year with the church congregation that
Oh,
worships here, the Impact Center. So right around the corner from here, they've gotten their hands on an old elementary school. It's old Patrick Henry Elementary School.
Jackson.
Jackson, yeah. It was Jackson Elementary, that's right. And we're going with them. We have our own room over there and everything. So
Oh, wow.
we're going to do Sukkot around there. It's called the Impact Community Center.
Okay.
And it'll be come in the morning and go home at night.
Oh, nice.
So you sleep in your own bed, but we'll still do all the Sukkot things. We're going to build sukkahs and do classes and have
Like
worship and
VBS.
dancing. And,
Yeah,
Like
kind of.
VBS, but it's
yeah,
not.
kind of.
Like
And for the kids, there'll be things like scavenger hunt. We're going to have an archery tournament.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're
Yes,
going to
my kids will love
have
it.
a fishing derby.
Oh my gosh.
We're going
Turkey
to,
shoots.
yeah, and a bunch of other stuff, and lots of good classes. There'll be a chili cook-off, and on the last Sunday of the week there, we're going to have, it's only going to be about 3 or 4 hours. We're going to have a craft fair. And the craft fair is not like you come and you sell a bunch of junk. The idea behind the craft fair is if you have a talent that you do something very well, it could be anything, knitting scarves or quilting, or in my case, I try to write sacred writings. Another guy who I think is going to come, he's a luthier. He builds stringed instruments by hand.
Oh, wow.
And my brother is a blacksmith. He's going to hammer out some stuff like a. So just so you know, the craft fair, the theme of the craft fair is look what Adonai made with my hands.
Mm.
It's not a thing where you come and you lay out a bunch of junk and
Sure,
you try to sell
sure.
it as a craft item or something.
Demonstration of
Right.
your.
It's a demonstration. Hey, this is what I was able to make because Adonai blessed my hands.
And you're gonna send an email of when this all is and stuff?
Yes, it's September 20th, but it's going to start being in every weekly email, and I got your email address now. So we do hope you'll come, and if you have something that you would like to say, hey,
Let me know what you want. She's got so many.
well, that's great. So, well, the guy that's a luthier, you wouldn't believe it, he's also a custom upholsterer.
Oh, wow.
Like it's unbelievable how talented the guy is. Like you could tell him, hey, I want a Batman theme for all the seats in my car, and it will be the best thing you ever seen. It's really neat.
Wow.
But anyway, he may have some of that there too. So anyway, we're going to have that craft fair, archery tournament. What are some of the other things we said? Lots of classes, dancing, praise and worship. The praise band from Tick is going to play often. I plan on sitting in with them. We're starting rehearsals soon, and we're going to help them learn a bunch of Messianic songs as well.
War dance.
The war dance, yeah, I wouldn't mind.
With real swords.
Yeah, right. Nice.
Talk about dangerous.
So-
If God is in it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's going to be a fantastic time.
Snake handling,
We've been
snake
planning it.
handling deal too, probably.
We've been planning for a long time, so really hope you can come.
Right, it sounds awesome, yeah.
And on that note, and very soon, I promise I'll have it up there. We have to get over there and do some work on our room over there. The air conditioner's in and it pumps out icicles. It is great.
So you thought you were cold here.
It doesn't have to, but it is, our room is one of the few that is ready to go. We can use it anytime we want. We just got to get in there, get the wall squared away, and figure out exactly what we're going to do. And that's going to come soon. So, any questions? All right, well, let's pray. Our Father, in the name of Yeshua, we thank you so much for letting us gather here today to study your word. It does strengthen us, and we thank you. Please be with everyone as we go home tonight, and please bless all of the families and the people who are represented here but not able to be with us. We thank you. Please keep them safe. In Yeshua's name. Amen. Amen.
When you were reading the news, like days